over the years we've had loads of different Call of Duty games. We've also had quite a few zombies games by this point, from all three of the main developers for COD, Treyarch, Infinity Ward, Sledgehammer. Every one of those studios has made its own zombies mode, and each and every one of them is unique and different. The zombies modes that we have from Sledgehammer take place in both the future and the past, World War II and Exo Zombies. Infinity Ward Zombies mode, which is Infinite Warfare Zombies, doesn't have a specific era. You could say on one hand it's futuristic, because the game as a whole is, but as far as the zombies mode goes, the maps and the time period that they take place in, they are all in the past. Zombies in Spaceland is in 1984, Raven the Redwoods was in the 1990s, Shaolin Shuffle 1972, Attack of the Radioactive Thing 1953. So I personally wouldn't class that as futuristic zombies, because all of the maps take place in the past, but it does kind of feel like it's in the future because of the weapons that we have, since the game takes place in the future, and for every zombies mode that we've had, whatever assets we get in the campaign and multiplayer are usually transferred to zombies, meaning we have futuristic weapons in zombies, and a lot of what we see in the maps look futuristic, but it takes place in the past. And then the third developer, of course, is Treyarch, and if we look at each and every one of their zombies modes, they've done the World War II setting, the Cold War period, a modern day map, and a couple of futuristic ones as well. So they've really done all four, or should I say all three, the past, the future, and the present. To me, and well, it's a fact really, the most futuristic zombies mode we've ever had is Exo Zombies. All of the maps that we had in that game took place in the 2050s, so that is the furthest forward in time we've seen zombies. That is the most futuristic, and you can tell that, it's clear to see they are Exo Zombies. But as I mentioned, Treyarch have also done their own version of futuristic zombies as well. But if you weren't, I guess, super into the storyline, if you didn't know the dates of each map, perhaps you wouldn't think that. Yes, we've had games from them such as BO2 and BO3, Black Ops 4, all of those games take place in the future, but not that far ahead. And especially when you look at the zombies modes of those games and you compare them to what we see in the multiplayer in the campaign, you look at Black Ops 2's multiplayer, you can tell it's futuristic, and then you look at BO2 Zombies and you probably wouldn't think all of those maps take place in the future. You look at the multiplayer in the campaign for Black Ops 3, again, you can clearly tell we have boost jumping in that game, it's very futuristic. But if you look at the zombies mode in BO3, besides from the weapons, the maps that we have, Der Eisendrache, Shadows of Evil, Gorod, etc., those maps take place in the past, and it's the same for BO4 Zombies. Black Ops 4 as a whole is a futuristic game, but the zombies mode, all of the maps take place in the past. So really, besides from Alpha Omega on BO4, which takes place in 2025, the only proper futuristic zombies game we've seen from Treyarch was Black Ops 2, because every map we got in that game, Nuketown, Transit, Die Rise, and Buried, all take place in the future. Every other zombies map that we've seen, besides from two exceptions, one being Moon on Black Ops 1, that was futuristic as well, and Alpha Omega, like I said, on BO4, that took place in the near future. Every single other zombies map we've had takes place in the past, usually during World War II or Cold War, or Call of the Dead, which took place in 2011. So not counting the actual games, we have seen, in a way, what Treyarch's take on a futuristic zombies game would be. It's nowhere near as comparable to what Sledgehammer did with Exo Zombies. That for me feels futuristic, whereas BO2 Zombies really doesn't, even though it is. And it just got me thinking, well, we've seen so much of the World War II and Cold War era from Treyarch. I would love to see a modern day or futuristic zombies mode from them. And what I mean by that is something that's very obviously futuristic, like Exo was. Now, if we look at the futuristic zombies maps we've had from Treyarch, these are all of them. Moon on BO1 took place in 2025. This one I think is a bit of an exception because, one, it takes place on the moon. It's a pretty unusual and unrealistic place for a zombies map, and when you think of a map taking place on the moon, you probably would think of it taking place in the future. And that map to me does feel futuristic, with the excavators, all of the technology, Griffin Station, a moon base. Just when I think of that, feels futuristic, and I think the map does give that vibe, even with BO1's weapons. We did have the Zombies Chronicles version of it on BO3 with weapons from that game, which would have been futuristic. Honestly, I don't think it makes that much of a difference, because the map as a whole, like I said, does feel like it takes place in the near future. Nowhere near as far as Exo, but it gives you an idea of what a fully futuristic zombies mode from Treyarch, where the maps actually take place in the future, could feel like. And then we go over to Black Ops 2, which gives us a more accurate representation, because all of these maps, besides from Mob of the Dead, take place in the future. The first one we had was Nuketown, which actually happens during the same time period as Moon, pretty much the same day that Moon happens in the year 2025. But because Nuketown is an old abandoned nuclear testing facility, a place that hasn't been updated through time, a place that has been left in the past, the map compared to Moon taking place in the same time period doesn't feel futuristic. But that's also the vibe that Treyarch were going for, because it's not supposed to. This isn't where people really lived. Things wouldn't have been updated, but we do see that change in Alpha Omega. The next map that we had in BO2 was Transit. Now, this map takes place 10 years after Moon and Nuketown in the year 2035. This is the most futuristic time period we've ever gotten from Treyarch for their zombies modes. And Transit is a really strange one, because I've done multiple videos on this map, and whenever I've mentioned the date that this map happens, people have always said, I always thought it took place in the 1960s or the 50s, because if you look at this map, it looks like it's stuck in the past. Things such as the bus, Ted, the diner, the illuminated signs, the town, gives you that retro feel. It has that vintage 60s look. Also, the power station looks old. Of course, Transit, or as it's actually called, Green Run, for some reason we all just called the map Transit, even though that's not its real name. Because of what happened to this map, the rockets hitting this location and destroying it, it does look like it could be in the 50s or the 60s, but it's not. This map is in the year 2035, and we actually have postcards of what Transit looks like before it was destroyed, and even on these, they give off that old 50s and 60s, maybe 70s feeling. Just look at the cars, the buildings, the colour of things. We don't actually have a date as to when these postcards are from, but nothing about this map really gives a futuristic feeling when this is still over 10 years from the day we are in now in 2023. The one thing I will say is, at this point, Transit has been destroyed for 10 years, which means since the year 2025 it wouldn't have moved on, things wouldn't have updated, but even then, looking at it, it doesn't look like a place that would have been thriving with people during the year 2025. It still looks very, very dated. Even then, it still would have taken place in the future. And for the other maps we have, Rise, Buried excluding Mob, those maps also take place in 2035. And again, similar to Transit, don't give off that futuristic feeling. I would say Rise does a little bit more than the rest. It could just be the fact that it takes place in a skyscraper. Since we're inside of the building, we don't get to see as much of the city that's destroyed. And the other map, Buried, is the exception to me, because this is an old mining town from the 1200s. This place pretty much has been locked in time for over 700 years. So even though we play here in the year 2035, this one's an exception, but the three futuristic maps that we have from Treyarch in this game, Nuketown, Transit and Rise, don't feel that way. And then the final one that we had, which was Alpha Omega on BO4, that happened in the year 2025, the same as Nuketown, but compared to that map, on this one we have the ADAMs, which are the robots. It's also a bit brighter in colour and isn't completely destroyed like Nuketown, but if I'm being 100% honest, it doesn't feel that futuristic. And when I thought about all of this, how we have had futuristic maps from Treyarch, but they don't really give off that vibe, there was a part of me that thought, I would actually like to see a futuristic zombies mode from them, or even a modern day zombies mode. Most of what we've seen is World War II and the Cold War setting. We've seen what could be with Moon, Nuketown, Transit, Rise, Alpha Omega, BO2, BO3, BO4, but we've never really had a proper, fully fledged futuristic zombies mode like we saw from Sledgehammer with Exo Zombies. There was their attempt of a zombies campaign in BO3, the Nightmares mode. That happened in the year 2065. I do usually like to forget this mode just because it wasn't very good. I don't think it gives a good representation of what Treyarch Zombies is, but it could give you a good representation of what a proper fully fledged futuristic zombies mode from them could be like. It's just really hard to compare because it's basically a rip-off from BO3's campaign. It isn't the traditional zombies maps going from location to location, but it's probably the closest example that we have. With Treyarch's next game in 2024, just off the top of my head, I think it takes place, was it 5 years after Cold War? It was something like that. So we definitely know Treyarch's next game is once again taking place during the Cold War or in the 90s, but somewhere in the future, I would love to see a futuristic zombies mode from them. I do like World War II, I like the Cold War era. They've done maps in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2010s, but I'd like to see them take on the futuristic setting, especially for zombies. Not just weapons, but a fully fledged mode. So there we go, it's just a thought. But let me know your opinions in the comment section below. As always, hopefully you've enjoyed the video today. If you have, drop a like rating. Make sure you are subscribed to stay up to date with the latest videos on the channel. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.